Welcome to the AI Value Podcast. Today, our guest is Dr. Jeffrey Funk. He is the author of Unicorns, Hype, and Bubbles, and then it says a guide to spotting, avoiding, and exploiting investment bubbles in tech. So,
Well, it's a pleasure to be here.
yeah, it's a pleasure to have you. I've been following you for a couple of years on LinkedIn, and I have to say, at first, so someone must have commented on one of your posts. And I was connected to them, and then I saw this this person making fun of AI, right? You were like pointing some things out, and all of a sudden I felt like I needed to defend it, right?
Yeah.
That was my initial reaction,
Yeah.
because I was working at H2O AI, and I was like passionate about it,
Yeah.
and I was like, wait a second, but I've had a chance to tune into you over the last several years and read some of your posts on LinkedIn. You probably are active on other social media platforms, but it's interesting. So my son and I actually will review your posts. He's 19 years old. He's active on LinkedIn, and we're like, today on the Funk, and then we'll start to read it. And we talk about it. Like, is he making a good point here? And a lot of times you are,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate the comment. Yeah. I do have people who really respond very negatively to me at first, but then, I just give a very measured, kind of calculated, kind of logical response. And then over time, they begin to see that, well, I have a point.
Right. And it's actually important to look at this from an investment standpoint, right? Because a lot of folks that work in tech, they also invest in tech.
Yeah.
Right. So they're exposed on multiple levels.
Yeah.
To
Well, I know
potential
how
bubbles.
most people evaluate things like AI. They use it and they say, oh, I love it. Oh my gosh, it's going to be so big. And then there are people that say, I hate it and it's going to be nothing. And I say, well, wait a minute, you're assuming that you know what all the work is that's going out, that's being done in the world. If you're going to say it's big, you have to understand all that work. And I got into this very early because I did my PhD in economics of robots at Carnegie Mellon back in 1984. And I realized I needed to know what work was. I worked with Unimation, on my research. Joseph Engelberg was the president. Unimation was the leading provider of robotics. But I realized I had to understand work. He was talking about, bricklaying and all this kind of stuff. But I knew that there was a lot more to the world than those types of manual labor. There was all this white collar work. And
Sure.
now we see a lot of AI impacting on that white collar work. So people tell me, well, I use it in making websites. It's great. Well, that's
Right.
one kind of work.
Right. There's many kinds of work, for sure. And the more hands-on and closer to data that work is, the more at risk it is at this point.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So a lot of you can see the McKinseys of the world. They announced they were letting like 9,000 folks go, and they were basically going to have teams of small teams of 3-4 people working with an army of agents.
Yeah. Yeah.
To do the work, to basically a pay for performance model.
Yeah. Yeah. I just read a paper yesterday by people who evaluated using AI in accounting. So they were you had all these third-party accountants who would go in and do some work, and some of them were using AI and coupled with optical character recognition. So they're reading all these invoices, then using AI to interpret it. And so they were able to get things done faster.
Right.
But then I'm thinking, well, then why do we need this consultant? If companies have if they develop their own AI and optical character recognition is old, okay, they can do a lot of this themselves. So these accounting companies may be in danger.
Right. Like OCR has been around for a long time, like the rules-based stuff.
Yeah.
Right. And being able to extract data from static fields that's in a template is one thing, but like the new agentic document extraction can actually uh, not just ingest the data, but to also encapsulate the context
Yeah.
a little
Yeah.
bit better, right? But it still needs to be monitored because it does hallucinate.
Yeah.
And if that's
So,
in a,
we can go through all these applications, right? That's one way to
yeah,
do this is to go through them all. I mean, I start from a more simpler framework. I just say, look at the money. Where are the revenues?
yes,
People vote with their money all the time. They pay for things that are useful to them, and they don't pay for things that aren't useful to them. And one of the problems, though, is that OpenAI and these other AI software companies are severely underpricing their models,
right,
uh, which means that people are using it in cases where they wouldn't if it was priced at cost, right? And so
right,
I don't know what percent, last year they lost 5 billion or 3.5 billion in revenues. That means they really should be raising their prices by at least double. And there was a lot of insights into this when Anthropic raised its prices, and it said that a lot of its users who had these unlimited usage for $200 a month, right? And most of these, there's like there's free versions. There's $200 a month, $200 a month, and Anthropic said that some of its users were spending. I shouldn't say spending. They weren't spending the money. Anthropic had to spend tens of $1,000s a month to
right,
deliver their software to these guys because they had to pay. They have to pay cloud service providers. So
right. There's actually a like a an entire economy of developers that are accessing these services via
yeah,
API, and
yeah,
it's a big challenge for early
yeah,
stage startups, especially because they could have one user that is consuming $5,000 worth of
yeah,
compute
yeah,
on a daily
yeah,
basis,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
right? I've seen
yeah,
that.
yeah,
And it's, so the economics are, if we look at the highest level of abstraction, just the tens of billions, or if not hundreds of billions of dollars that are being invested in the infrastructure right now to build it out. And just the nature uh, like the dot-com bubble burst, there was the infrastructure build out, and Cisco and companies like that were the benefactors. And it's all fine and good as long as their revenues are accelerating. And
yeah,
then they're not. So they get to a point where they're no longer accelerating, but they're still growing, and it's still a great company, right? And the
yeah,
technology is useful. It's transformed the world. Um, but the fact of the matter is once it gets built out and the growth goes away, you know, like a company like
yeah.
Palantir is the darling of this particular bubble.
But I'm not sure Cisco's technology was being sold under cost that much. Whereas, see, now we have this case where
Right,
OpenAI is selling below cost. So then people are using the cloud services more than they would if they had to pay OpenAI a reasonable price.
right,
So if OpenAI were to raise its prices, like Anthropic has done, and if all these guys rose their prices, then suddenly the usage of cloud service will go down, and these
sure,
cloud service providers would be left with, well, with lower growth and thus, a lot of
right,
idle capacity.
right.
And it takes years to put in build these data centers, planning and construction. It's years, and so if suddenly everyone realizes we don't need as much data centers as we thought we did, then there's a big pipeline of data centers that's really not needed.
That's going to happen for sure,
Yeah,
right? And so
yeah,
I was in 1999 2000 timeframe. I was working at a company called American Power Conversion. They're now part of Schneider Electric. I was an engineer there, and their business was to sell the physical infrastructure for data centers. So the rack
yeah,
systems, the battery backup power, the air conditioning, and all of that.
Yeah.
And from like 1995 to 99, it was fantastic. The growth was, I had options. I was going to cash out, right? And so then
Yeah.
you get the quarterly report, the first one where it's not so good news. And so my options are at, let's say, $14 and the stock's at 70. And after that reporting period, it gets cut in half. But I still have, so I held on to them. It'll recover, but it's the nature of a bubble and not recognizing that it was a
Yeah.
bubble,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
it was sensitive to that particular
Yeah.
trend running its course as it naturally does. Our economy in the United States is a series of bubbles,
Yeah. It has been
right?
recently. I mean, 99 or 2000, 2008 now. And really, I call the 2022 startup bubble a bubble separate from this generative AI bubble.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that was I mean, that kind of hit a big speed bump when Silicon Valley Bank went bankrupt, right? And that
No,
was
but then they
that
got
was
bailed
that was like,
out.
well, they
They
kind of did,
used, yeah.
but that, I mean, I was at a startup, an Israeli-based startup that's no longer in business, and the CFO sent everybody an email. I got our money out just in time, right?
Yeah.
And we're like, all right, whew, thank you,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
awesome, you know.
Yeah.
So, there was a ripple effect to that. There were a lot of companies that didn't survive.
Okay.
That
I
they
guess
got bailed
foreign
out, but
companies weren't
not
protected.
everybody got
Yeah.
bailed out.
Yeah. The foreign companies didn't. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So the other speed bump is the release of GPT-5 by OpenAI, because OpenAI Sam Altman has been saying for, you know, at least a year or two that AGI is so important and we're going to get to AGI, and this is what's been driving a lot of the market. You know, we can talk about it later, but there isn't enough OpenAI revenues to justify all this, and software revenues. And so it's kind of the belief that's been justifying this bubble, the belief that we're going to hit AGI. And yet you look at the performance of GPT-5. I mean, generally it appears that the vote is that it's better than GPT-4, but not much. And so, and that's 2 years.
mm,
And I know some people say, well, OpenAI just did bad. They're going to lose. Someone else is going to do better. Well, this company's been working real hard on this. They've been leading this whole charge. If they couldn't do it, it's probably hard to do. And if we've hit diminishing returns for these models, then we have to stop assuming that AGI or anything close to AGI is going to come in the near future.
right.
And therefore, we really overpriced these. We've underpriced OpenAI software, and now overpriced all these cloud company share prices.
Sure. There's I mean, it's sort of like an arms race. It's like a kind of like a Elmer Fudd and Bugs Bunny going back and forth, right? With a knife, a bigger knife, a gun, a bigger
Yeah,
gun.
yeah,
You've got Grok, which has PhD level understanding of everything, and
yeah,
right, and so it can do well on a test. And there's Anthropic and Perplexity's, provides the references. The limiting factor is not the the foundation models. The limiting factor for the bricks and mortar world is their own infrastructure. It's a different architecture.
yeah,
Like IT architecture is a different architecture than what is needed to support real-time data workloads.
yeah,
Some industries were already in the process of standing up that second architecture in banking, for example, or insurance. But in manufacturing, it's a lot of companies are still running on AS400s,
yeah, yeah,
right? So
yeah. Yeah, so there's issues there. I I think that we've spent companies have too much money has been spent emphasize on these foundation models and infrastructure for it, and not enough on applications. And it's probably likely that you use a small model that gets licensed to someone. So it's small, so it doesn't have high training costs, doesn't have inference costs. And then the company trains that model on its own data, right? And then it can do a specific thing, like provide chat bots for its company. So the company has specific products, specific things, specific policies. So the AI gets trained on that, and then it isn't expensive to use, and it provides value to the company. I think
Right.
that Sam Altman went down the wrong road with, we're going to develop God, it can do everything.
Sure.
And that's a mistake. What we want in the end is just productivity tools. We want something that's going to improve productivity for a specific case. And there's a lot of good cases. And it's unfortunate they don't get much attention. Instead, it's been this, everybody's going to be unemployed from OpenAI, and
Right.
oh my gosh, we've noticed an uptick in layoffs. They're all going to be unemployed, right? It's always this conversation at a very broad level that's really not good for this technology, focusing on unemployment and things like that, and college grads can't find jobs, and we need to get back to specific applications and training AI on the company's data to make a good productivity tool.
Right. The chatbot use case has been successful. I've seen it in use at a lot of companies where you get that first level of interaction with with an agent, and it's able to point you to where to go. So you're not sifting around the knowledge base anymore. It's bringing it to you based on the question you asked, and then you have to ask to talk to a human if you actually have a hard situation, a difficult situation and you need an actual human. So you can just, you've got to be persistent sometimes,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
that's a useful application right there for sure. Um, and there's a lot of useful applications in sales and marketing tech.
yeah,
But all of that relies on having good data, good, clean
yeah,
data. Like the data has to be fit for consumption,
yeah,
right? So if you have a messy CRM and you don't know who your customers are or who your ICP should be, um, you know, getting all of that set up and configured is a non-trivial exercise when it comes to
yeah. And
getting
I
the
guess
data.
you're saying that that's a big bottleneck, and that's where a lot of effort is going to have to go into in the next few years. And uh,
Correct.
yeah, yeah. And so it's going to be it's going to be a lot slower than people thought. Yeah, yeah,
Like a lot of bricks and mortar businesses, like let's say insurance, where they have policy and they have claims against the policy, and everything's in PDFs. And back in the day, not too long ago, 7, 8 years ago, they'd have some offshore teams in the Philippines or India, whatever, that would look at the documents and make uh a decision based on the guidelines that they were given. And so with basic OCR technology, they were able to reduce that from 100 people to 50 people or whatever, right? And that's sort of the
yeah,
economics on a company level. And I've been involved in a project where it was 500 people to 100 people,
yeah.
and that was sort of the ROI there. And now that entire process can be managed with agents.
Do you think that the number of people employed in these kind of call centers in the Philippines has declined substantially recently?
I don't know. I can't answer that question.
Yeah, because I've read
That
some
would be
articles that says it hasn't, and they're not
I'd
even
be
scared.
speculating. Yeah, I
It's
think that they find other customers for them to service. There's a lot of business to support globally, right?
Yeah,
And yeah, so it's they're not tied to just one client.
yeah.
And so
Yeah, so it'll be years before they're really impacted because there's some clients who are leaving them because they're using AI, but then there's a whole bunch of new clients they're getting from other places in the world, and it'll take a while. I mean, I remember when Nokia had just huge sales that even after iPhone was introduced, they had these huge sales because all these entry level phones were they still dominated that market. They lost the high end to Apple.
right,
And so it took a long time before, even though a lot of people could see it coming, that of course iPhone is going to decimate them. But it took a long time because they were strong at this low end phone there were so many made in the world, and
right.
so it took a long time. So I mean, it's the same thing here. That it's going to take a long time. It may even take longer than it did for Nokia to suffer a revenue loss,
Right.
big revenue loss.
Well, you look at the duration from the top of the dot-com bubble burst to when the Nasdaq, um, peaked and troughed and came back to that level on its way up.
Yeah,
It was 15
yeah,
years, I think.
yeah, yeah. It is a
Right.
long
So
time. Yeah,
that's a sort of a reference point right there. So maybe
yeah,
we're in this market, we're at 1997 range, 96, 97. And then we're going to have that parabolic euphoric, it's like I'm advising my
yeah,
my son who has his Robinhood account on his phone. He got a 1480 on his SAT, so I gave him $1,480, put it in Robinhood for him, and I'm like, whenever double, sell half,
yeah,
right?
yeah. Well,
As we go through this, because he's got some crypto, he's got an Nvidia and AMD, so he's up 700%
yeah, yeah.
because he sold half along the way, like when Trump was elected, and everything just kind of went up ballistically.
Uh,
He was just selling half of his crypto, put it on the
yeah,
sidelines, took his
yeah.
girlfriend out to dinner a
Well, it's a
bunch.
big question when the bubble's going to pop. If you look at
Yeah,
the 2000 dot-com bubble, and in 2000, and of course the bubble started to pop really in March, and it took 2 years to go down. But in 2000, there were big revenues for the internet. I mean, people had to buy personal computers to access the internet. Now, some people already had them
sure.
in their office, but people at home, they bought computers, and it was a big investment. I mean, so
Right,
they perceived the internet as being really useful, so useful that they were going to buy a PC, they were going to pay for internet subscriptions, which I think covered the internet company's costs, and they started buying stuff on e-commerce, a whole lot of things.
right,
If you total all that up in 2024 dollars, it's 1.5 trillion.
right,
Whereas if you total up the AI software, well, last year was probably 5 billion. Maybe it makes it 20 billion this year. I don't know, maybe even more.
right.
Even if you throw in the data center revenues, I think they were 20 billion last year. I don't know what they'll be this year. But still, this is so small compared to the 2000 internet bubble revenues. They were huge. So in some ways, that bubble may pop sooner. Uh, and it was going to be bigger. It's going
Right.
to be bigger
Well,
because,
there are other forces at play though that impact this, like global
yeah,
liquidity, right? So we're also in a fiat bubble,
yeah,
right, across the globe. So
yeah,
there's going to be this liquidity, like the U.S. dollar is I would say that the current administration is trying to devalue it,
yeah,
strategically and intentionally devalue the dollar, right?
yeah,
And they're trying to drive down interest rates without having
yeah,
the Fed reducing interest rates. So they're trying to force that, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
I think though when it comes to job loss, unemployment and companies making decisions to let people go, I think those factors are probably you know, more front and center than AI's ability to replace people. I think they're just, you know,
Yeah, I would agree. And about the interest rates, what really, one of the factors that precipitated the fall in the dot-com bubble popping was the interest rates were raised. So the prime rate was raised
right,
in 2000. And so that kind of initially caused the bubble to pop and stocks to fall. And probably a lot of people said,
right,
well, it's just the interest rates. It'll come back. But,
right. So
once you start going down, then people get scared. Some people get scared.
right, right.
So
Well, I mean,
that's hard to
all of a
predict, though.
sudden it goes from risk on to risk off
Yeah,
from a
yeah,
trading standpoint, right?
yeah, yeah,
And then you have that. I mean, so there's when you're talking about equities, stock markets, there's the macro, the fundamental, and the technical aspects of it's like a three-legged stool,
yeah,
right? And there's a they're all sort of feeding into each other when it's topping out like that. It creates a head and shoulders pattern, for example,
yeah,
right? And
yeah,
then people start selling because that pattern has materialized.
yeah,
And then, the Fed is still increasing interest rates. So
yeah,
there's more, restricted policy on liquidity.
yeah,
So it goes from risk on to risk off,
yeah,
and things just kind of turn. And that's sort of the measure of the bubble popping is the stock market, right?
yeah. And you probably know a lot more about some of these financial matters than I do. I mean, I'm an engineer. My bachelor's degree is in physics, and my PhD was in engineering. And
Right,
mostly, what I see my team is trying to objectively understand these technologies and what they're doing and what they probably could do and the potential and things like that. So I wrote a lot of papers on exponential improvements many years ago as an academic, and people would tell me, academics tell me, no, 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 this doesn't matter. This doesn't matter. And I remember I applied this to the iPhone when it came out. It was a paper I wrote about 10 years ago. And reviewers said, no, 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 no. It's all about an app store. They had an app store. That's what this is all about. They had an app store and Apple succeeded.
right,
And, and so this is what I've been fighting against. So, I agree that a lot of these factors you're talking about with the bubble are really important. But I will just have to concede that you know more than me on this. And so,
I
it's
so
other
I,
things that I feel like I
yeah,
know.
I'm also an engineer. I'm an electrical engineer,
Yeah,
and I'm not like an economist. Um, I have a few YouTube channels that I follow and some subscriptions to advisors and things like that. And I have a club that I'm part of. And we talk about these things. And we're actively talking about
yeah, yeah,
when's the party going to be over? There's also the crypto
yeah,
party too,
yeah,
right? So um, everybody is really quick on the retail side to spot, something that looks like a reversal pattern. And it's like, I'm out. And it's like
yeah,
2 days later, it's higher. So they're
yeah,
very
yeah.
quick
It
to
is.
react on the retail side.
Yeah,
On the institutional side, they move slower,
yeah,
right? So, but that's really that's what used to be the big money that would move the markets, and
yeah,
now we have millions of people on Robinhood and whatever on their phones, and they're just making trades while they're in a meeting or they're driving, right?
yeah, yeah,
It's like right there. What used to be
yeah,
$100 to get 100 shares, you'd have to call a broker, right? You'd have
yeah,
to call
yeah,
Fidelity. I want to buy 100 shares of
yeah,
whatever.
yeah, yeah,
Now you can do it for zero. It's not zero. It
yeah,
costs you something, you know.
yeah. Well, that
But
increases the volatility. I can see how it helps on the way up, but it also can help on the way down. And
right,
but it's hard to predict what these people will do. I think what your point is, they're very emotional. They don't think about the types of things we're talking about. They just think about, well, I like AI. It's going to be the next big thing, and how do they know it's the next big thing, right?
right,
Because I get people like this on LinkedIn all the time, they say something about, well, no, it's not, the bubble's not going to pop, or this is not going to happen, blah, blah, blah. And I say, why? I want them to give me counter my argument. I want to hear it.
Sure.
But a lot of people can't. And it's unfortunate in our society that people are very good at telling you the conclusion.
Right.
But what's the factors involved, right? That's what
Right.
we don't have that understanding from college educated people. And that's
Right.
primarily because universities haven't taught people how to think. They just tell people the conclusion, whether it's whether AI is going to succeed, or whether who's at fault in the Middle East, or something like this. They have
Sure.
they'll tell you the conclusion, but not how to think about. You should analyze it.
Right. Right. Yeah. And I make a living in the AI startup space. So I work with a
Yeah,
lot of early stage startups, sometimes helping them acquire their first customer. Sometimes I'm coming in and they've been in business for 2 years and they don't have a single customer, right? Or
yeah,
they've been in business for 4 years and they have 5 customers and
yeah,
they've lost
yeah,
30 customers,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So and there's thousands of these companies,
yeah,
so there's not just in the United States, there's a
yeah,
thriving startup
yeah,
ecosystem that
yeah,
is, they're all connected to each other now globally because
yeah,
of the internet was built out and now we can all collaborate.
yeah,
And a lot of these tools are useful to perform a lot of the, let's say, the low level work, are labeling, data, coding the first version, or like a prototype, building a prototype, um, just in 2 clicks on Lovable. And
yeah,
Lovable's a successful company. They're charging a subscription fee, and it's probably the fastest growing subscription business in the history of subscriptions. Um, but it's made the entry costs and the friction to start your own company much lower. So that
yeah,
means that a lot of people who maybe did something special at the bank decided, I'm going to leave the bank
yeah,
and go start a company.
yeah,
And it's like 6 months into it, they get referred to me.
yeah,
And I'm like, you should go ask for your job back at the bank,
yeah.
right?
Well, let me push back a little on the software coding. I mean, there was a study by METR that got quoted a lot where, the software engineers who used coding assistants took 90% longer than those who didn't use the assistant. That was a small database, so certainly,
Sure.
be careful making conclusions. But, METR expected that people use code assistants would be much faster. And of course, it depends on how big, complex the task is, right? So if the task
Sure.
is really complex, it's harder for the AI to do it. And they'd done a study a few months ago, farther back, looking at the length of the task that AI agents could solve with 50% accuracy. Now, 50%
Right.
accuracy is nothing, right? That's a coin flip. And they did this
Right.
because they said, well, when we look at specific applications, we find there's diminishing returns, right? So that should right away have received a lot more attention. That this is the problem, is that
Sure.
it may be making 50% isn't very hard, but when you want to go to 90, 99%, 99.9% and higher, which is what we need,
To be
right?
production ready.
Google and Amazon
Yeah.
have, 99.9999% uptime, right? You need this type of thing in the world. You need it in driverless cars, right? And
Right.
so maybe there are some tasks that don't need, some applications that don't need high accuracy. And those are the ones we have to look for, because those are the ones that AI can handle. But the ones that require a lot of accuracy, well, it's going to be very hard. You can see it's going to be hard from these two MRETR studies, then the fact that Chat GPT-5 is only marginally better than GPT-4, right? It's not going to get that much better. So this hullabaloo about this, wow, look at the exponential change. It's the number of tasks that we can handle. AI can handle 50% actually is doubling every 7 months. It's really fast.
Right.
That's what they wanted to emphasize. But you got to go to the 4 nines, the 6 nines for it to be useful.
Right.
And so, software, yeah, someone's gonna have to have a good process and be able to handle these errors, right? Because it's harder to handle the errors when the AI creates the errors than when you yourself, because you're going through writing the code and you're saying, well, I don't do it this way or that way, I'll do it this way. And so then when an error occurs, you think, okay, I know how to fix that.
Right.
But the coding is just harder. So,
Well, there's a nuance there to point out, though. Someone that is an
yeah,
experienced coder who knows how to debug,
yeah,
and it, like when they're hands-on writing the code, and then
yeah,
when they go to compile, they get certain errors. All right, I need to do that.
yeah,
This
yeah,
has happened before.
yeah,
I remember this one. Fix it,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
The younger generation, my son's going to go to school for computer engineering and business,
yeah,
and his generation is going to be more reliant on the easy button,
yeah.
which is unfortunate. They're not going to learn how to
Yeah, it's a
actually
problem.
think
Yeah,
through it,
yeah,
right? So,
yeah. Yeah, that is a big problem. I agree. I mean, my son's 12, and he tells me some kids use ChatGPT to write their papers.
sure.
Now, I don't think he does, but because I don't see him, I kind of watch him all the time when he's at home. I go in there and check on what he's doing. I don't think he is, but I could see that the temptation is there. And you've got a system in Singapore where everybody is so focused on the grades and these superficial things and these exams, and
Right.
I can see the temptation.
Yeah.
So this is scary.
So
This is
as an engineer, you understand, like if you're taking calculus 1, 2, 3, multivariate linear algebra, whatever the course is, differential
yeah,
equations. I always had the discipline of solving the problem multiple ways so I could check it. Like I would go through it during an
yeah,
exam and just rifle through it, and then I would go back and start checking and doing it a different
yeah,
way to arrive at the answer, to validate it. So using ChatGPT to check your work. Now, if
yeah,
if it went wrong somewhere along the way, where did it go wrong, and identifying that so that you can learn from it is really important. But a lot
yeah,
of these kids are not going to do that,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. So people have been talking about the lack of critical thinking in young people for a very long time. I mean, 30 years people have been talking about this.
Right?
I mean, I don't know how many books on education I've read,
Yeah.
and so now ChatGPT is built on top of that. It's a superficiality that's built on top of this that's just going to make a problem that already existed make the problem worse.
Right.
And I don't think universities are set up to handle this. I mean, again, universities have been under pressure to change for a very long time. It's been at least 10 years that the college and number of students going to college has declined.
Right.
And, so there's changes that need to be made and that aren't being made. And now AI comes along and universities are saying, well, let's use AI. That will solve everything.
Right.
Right. And it probably can help if it's done right, but I don't have any confidence these people are going to be able to do it right. There's a few people who will. Unfortunately, I don't think the rest of the people are smart enough to say, hey, so-and-so doing a good job. Let's do this. They're
Right.
more likely to just say, who cares? I've got my academic paper to write. I mean, there's so much emphasis on writing academic papers in universities, and there's no discussion of them, right? It's all just, we got to get lots of papers out. And
Right.
it's an unfortunate environment that's been created within universities. And
Right.
so
So
I'm not
focus on volume
optimistic they'll.
versus quality, quantity versus
Yeah,
quality.
very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
you know. So a lot of what I didn't write so much of this in my book, Unicorns, Hype, and Bubbles, but I have some papers a couple of years ago. I wrote more on all the changes that have gone on in university research, and thus we aren't getting out as much great university researchers as we did. I mean, you look back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s when we had a very long list of technologies from polymers to transistors, integrated circuits, lasers, nuclear power, radar. It goes
Yep.
on and on and on compared to what are we getting now? Well, we got AI. That's partially due to university research, but
Right.
how good is that going to be? Is that going to compare to the transistor and polymers and things like that? I don't know.
Right. Well, another good indication of the degradation of fidelity is music, right? So all the great
Why do you say that?
musicians of the 60s and 70s, even the 80s and the 90s, what they played real instruments, like a Jimmy Page. I mean, come on, you know?
Yeah,
We do have Billy Strings though,
yeah,
but he's a flat picker out of the Midwestern United States. He's fantastic, but he was
right.
unplugged. He was not plugged into the internet and everything. He just had his guitar. And, so there's something to be said about having that level of immersion and focus into a domain and becoming an expert in that area, and to be able to put out good stuff, whether it's music or it's papers. It's thought provoking, right? It's inspiring. It's not just, like I'm a musician. I can just go online and there's an AI that will write a song for me, right? It's great for writer's block. So I've got a song that I've had it for years. It's 75% done. I just go and it just gives me a couple more, verses, some ideas,
So you're
you
saying
know.
today's musicians don't devote as much time to learning instruments as the ones of 50 years ago?
There's fewer young people that are, have the desire to learn how to play the guitar versus playing video games. There's just more
Well,
distractions. There's
yeah.
more
No, no,
things for
you're
them
right.
to
You're right.
spend their time
Yeah,
on,
yeah,
you know?
yeah, yeah, I know.
I've got
Yeah,
7 guitars and I have 3 kids and none of the kids play an instrument. So I
yeah,
bought a piano and I put it out.
yeah,
So they're like playing with that a little bit, but they're not really learning it, So
yeah, yeah.
we've got the
Yeah,
video
I've been
game,
through the same thing with my son.
right?
We had a piano for a while, and I played the piano when I was young, and yeah, those video games, it's a problem, and it's like every time there's a break, I see my son jumping on it, playing the same video game. It's like, don't do that, do something else, do something that's interesting. If you want to play a video
Right?
game, do it with your friends where you're talking. Don't play
Yeah.
these silly games on the phone. It's a nervous reaction. I can tell. I can tell it's a nervous reaction.
Yeah. There's a good book called the Paradox of Choice, and it's really about marketing. Um, people just have a lot of choices nowadays, but the paradox of choice applies to the human experience across the board, pervasively.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know, and kids just have too many things to distract them,
yeah,
um, or to choose from, and
yeah.
so that's been a big impact on just going back to the initial point. Kids reaching for a guitar and wanting to do that and
No,
sticking
I
with it.
agree.
It's hard
Kids
work.
get
It's
bored
hard
and
work.
they have something to do. And what they
Yeah.
need to do is think about what they're going to do and think about
Yes.
things that are on a deeper level. But you see, I think the same applies to university researchers. See, today's researchers, top researchers, spend very little time thinking.
Right.
I mean, if you go back and you read, there's a book about Bell Labs called The Idea Factory.
Right. Where a lot of
And
the early AI work was done. Right.
yeah, and these guys, they didn't really have a bureaucracy like we have today. So they were thinking. They were really thinking. Nowadays, a lab director has, all these people he needs to get funding for. He has all these postdocs, PhD students, postdocs. He's got to write papers with them. He has to, or she has to write letters of recommendation. They're bureaucrats. Even though they may be very smart, they're smart in a different way. They're not smart about sitting there thinking about some idea and coming up with these thought. What is it? What Einstein did is thought experiments.
Right.
Coming up with these new advances in science requires a lot of deep thought. You can't be doing all this bureaucratic work, writing letters, writing this, writing that. You got to be thinking. And right, and as you're saying, they learn this at a very young age, not to think, because they can get distracted. They can just go off and play a video game or watch a movie if they're bored. It's very sad.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. It's just the pressure, like just getting back to the business world of having to get stuff out quickly, right?
Yeah,
Is
yeah,
is 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 sort of where that attention span or lack thereof and that
yeah,
lack of deep thought ends up um as those humans transition to adult life and they're in a working environment, they've got to
yeah,
just rush it through, no deep thought,
yeah,
just kind
yeah,
of superfluous stuff, you know? And there's an abundance of content now that is just superfluous,
yeah, yeah,
right? You see a lot of it on social.
yeah. Well, I've heard similar uh, type of conclusion can be drawn for VCs. I mean, there's a lot of VCs that are having all these young people kind of think about what goes on in their life and think about, how it could be done differently and, all these basic service, how they can be supplied. And
Right.
uh, you have to be careful there. I mean, you're never going to come up with, transistors or radar or any of these big groundbreaking technologies, businesses that changed our world. Those are the ones you want, right? You're just aiming students at something that, well, maybe, yeah, I mean, maybe this will help, yeah, Uber helps, but Uber's only profitable because they're able to raise prices. And why was it able to raise prices? Because during the lockdown, all this public transport, kind of a lot of it went out of business, so that when the lockdowns ended and people started going back to work, what were they going to use? They couldn't use public transportation. They had to use Uber, and Uber was a bottleneck. So Uber said, well, we'll just raise prices.
Right.
And so I don't think that the ideas that have come out of these VCs can even compare to what we had 50 years ago. And, there's a lot of reasons for that, from some of the things we have just been talking about to the hype that business schools produce. I mean, business schools are very, very superficial in terms of handling these things. And I mean, you have these business professors who are so adamant that AI is going to change the world. Ethan Mollick and Tyler Cohen, for example. And yet, if you were to ask them, what academic models are you using to reach the conclusions that you've reached, they wouldn't be able to tell you. There isn't any models. And yet
Right.
they claim that they're at the top of their field because they are some of the people who produce those models. Well, there are none of those models. And this is part of the problem. So business schools aren't the main source of the problem. I mean, there's a whole
There's a
factors that I
confluence
think,
of circumstances that are
yeah,
contributing to this. Yeah.
yeah, but they're part of it.
Well, so there's sort of two I would say there's two economies that are playing out right now. There's the regular bricks and mortar world, and then there's the sort of the cloud native world. And in the cloud native world, it's all sort of built for purpose for this AI, chapter that we're having right now. It's there have been several AI hype cycles, right?
Yeah,
So they're in a better position to take advantage of it, and there may be some new businesses that come from it that will end up disrupting the traditional bricks and mortar businesses, like car insurance. So you can it's all running on a mainframe at Liberty Mutual, right? But you can just
yeah,
create it in the cloud. and then offer it for less money.
Yeah.
You don't have to pay a commission rate for a
Well,
sales guy to sell it for you out of his house, you know?
if
So,
you
in
really want to change insurance in a way that's going to really improve productivity and will make the better, you can't just make the claims processing faster. You need to come up with something that reduces the incidence of automobile accidents, housing fires, or something. For
right,
instance, smoke detectors reduced the frequency of fires and thus allowed insurance companies to reduce the insurance rates. That was a real innovation, but because claims processing is very small, it's not that big, or if you could reduce the rate of houses that are destroyed by hurricanes, right? In Florida and these places where it's just terrible. It's obvious that these houses are
right. That's where I live.
shouldn't. Yeah, well,
Yeah, yeah.
it's you're just rolling the dice. It's
Hurricane Ian, it
yeah,
erased the entire coastline.
yeah,
It was yeah, it was crazy. Like
yeah,
20-foot swells,
yeah. I
you
lived
know?
in Japan for a long time, and Japan has far more hurricanes than America. But you know what? They don't really live on the coast. All the major cities are in bays. I mean, Tokyo City is in a bay.
Sure.
Same with Nagoya. Kobe, where I lived for a long time, and Osaka are behind this Shikoku Island. So they
Right,
don't
right.
get hit by hurricanes. And I remember when I first was going there, I was saying, "Why don't you guys live on the coast, man? In California, it's great. It's so wonderful. You have those great views and you can enjoy the ocean." No, no, no. There's hurricanes. I kind of
Right.
thought
Oh,
they were crazy.
typhoons on that over
They
there,
call them
right?
typhoons. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
now I see their point. I see, wait a minute. All these homes that are being built on California coast and for different reasons, there are fires and mudslides and stuff, but Florida and stuff, it's right. It's a calculated risk they've taken. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yes, and it's the homeowners insurance and flood insurance. Oh, it's just lovely.
yeah,
Yes.
the prices have gone up so much. And,
Mm.
most of us predicted it. I remember 20 years ago thinking everyone was talking about climate change. 20 years ago. Well, what are the insurance companies doing? If this is really dangerous, the insurance rates would have gone up. Well, eventually they did. Eventually they have.
Sure, they have, but the banks are still, providing 30-year mortgages for more houses to be built in these areas that
Yeah,
are supposed to
yeah,
be underwater, and
yeah, yeah,
so. But
yeah.
that's 100
It's
years from now. So, this is a 30-year mortgage, right?
yeah, yeah.
So cool. So I haven't had a chance to read your book yet. I just got it, right?
Oh,
So I want to read it, and then maybe we can have another session because then I'll be a little bit more knowledgeable, like more
yeah, yeah,
synced up with you,
yeah.
right? Um, so it's and I think this actually combines a few domains that I'm really immersed in, which is the AI ecosystem and uh, investing.
Yeah.
So, but I invest my money in a lot of regular businesses like the Cheesecake Factory, great company, right?
Mm, yeah.
Um, so not saying you should buy it. I'm not an advisor, but like that's I don't
Yeah.
invest a lot of money in the in AI related stuff. I do have some AMD
Yeah.
right now though,
Yeah. Yeah.
because I think that they're going to do the same thing. Maybe they won't overtake Nvidia like they did Intel in the CPU realm, but this is their model. This is what they do. They're very good at it,
Mm, mm,
and it's just the law of small numbers for them. So if they're able to double their market share or triple it, it's still only going to be like 15% of total like global GPU install
mm,
base. Their
yeah.
the valuations will just justify their stock price being at like $400 or $500.
Right.
It's like a no brainer, you know.
Okay. Yeah.
But
As long as the
you got to be able to
demand
spot
keeps
the
going.
bubble,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
It's just a matter
Yeah.
of when.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, sir.
Well, it's a pleasure doing this. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, yeah. I enjoyed the conversation, and we got a little off topic here and there, but I think that's just kind of the nature of these things. It's kind of like the Joe Rogan podcast. Anything's fair game. It doesn't have to be all serious about AI and doom and gloom and bubbles, and um, it's a conversation that like that a lot of people should be having. Um,
Yeah.
as they're going through they're working for AI startups. A lot of people I know, and they're so invested in it that when they see one of your posts, they're like, "Oh, this guy, he's," I can't wait to see
Yeah.
the reaction from folks. Like, I can't believe you interviewed that guy. Like, he's pretty cool, and he actually kind of looks like Kurt Russell. Has anybody ever told you that?
A bit, yeah. He's
A
almost the
little
same
bit,
age
yeah,
as me too. So he was, I think he was on Disney movies when I was a kid.
yeah.
Uh, I
He's a
get
good
a lot
guy.
of Harrison Ford too. My brother used to be always said, looks like Harrison Ford.
Harrison Ford. All right,
But
cool.
yeah,
I mean, two good-looking guys. Um, Kurt Russell has a cabin up in Range, Maine. He and Goldie Hawn and my wife's parents have a cabin up there. So he's just a regular guy up there.
yeah,
Nobody's like, "Can I have your autograph?" He's just kind of coming in to get, some supplies or,
oh yeah,
eating
yeah,
out on the town, and nobody really bothers him. And I think that's why
yeah, yeah,
they love it
yeah,
there,
yeah, yeah,
so
yeah. Yeah, I've
cool.
been a fan of him since I was a kid because I think he was a childhood actor. And so,
Yes.
same age,
And
almost
my
the same
favorite movie
age
from
as me.
Kurt
So,
Russell is Stargate.
yeah,
So he
yeah.
was in Stargate. And then I got into the series, and I've watched the series like 3 times. My wife hates it, but it's like, here we go again, honey.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, all right, sir.
Okay.
Maybe we can do it again in a couple of months, or, you know,
Sure. Yeah.
be a recurring guest,
Yeah. Yeah. Love
as this
to.
whole thing plays out.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd love to have you on where you can say, I told you so. Told you,
Yeah.
you
Well, I'm
know?
sure you're going to say I told you so too on some things. So that's the way the
It's a
world
matter of
works.
time because
Yeah.
everything runs its
Yeah.
course, right?
Yeah. It does. Yeah.
So it's going to run its course.
Yeah.
So I actually think you've carved up a genius niche. I mean, you have a lifetime of material because there's one hype cycle after the next. They even have the Gartner hype cycle. It's like,
Yeah. I don't like that. They
no,
kind of assume that everything's going to succeed in the end,
well,
and
things
everything
drop
doesn't.
off, and then they
Yeah.
combine some things, and it's like
Yeah.
you know,
And I don't
and the
see that big a hype cycle back in the 70s for semiconductors and personal computers. I don't see the level of hype. I really, you know, I remember growing up hearing about the Great Depression, and I thought, when
yep,
are we going to have another bubble break? But it took from 1929 to really 2000. Now, within there were some housing bubbles that burst. And so
right,
Robert Schiller's book, Irrational Exuberance, he won a Nobel Prize for it, covers a lot of these smaller housing bubbles. But housing bubbles are there's some different dynamics there that are playing out. And there's some similarities, of course, but there's some different dynamics. There's no technology, it's other things. And of course, and that was also in the 2008, the subprime mortgages. So, uh,
right. There was the one in the early '90s.
the housing bubble, yeah. Well, I know my parents lost money
Yeah,
in one housing bubble. Yeah. Yeah.
yep, and we'll have another one, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, the thing is that the stock market bubble is is one of the reasons why housing prices stay high. There's a lot of reasons, but so if the AI bubble pops, then a lot of the housing bubble is gonna
Well,
pop.
the debasement of currency we're gonna start seeing asset values just it's gonna be people are gonna it's gonna be euphoric for regular people. They're gonna think that they're swimming in cash, but the
Yeah,
value of their money is gonna be diminishing
yeah, it
so
could be.
quickly. you know,
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
every fiat currency has run its course, and I think we're in the latter innings for the U.S. dollar.
Yeah.
You know,
Could
so
be. I don't claim
yeah,
to be an
right.
expert.
Yeah, I'm not either, but it's like,
Yeah.
I don't have a crystal ball, but I have an AI
Yeah.
cup.
Yeah. Well, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, I would have been right in with you making my predictions, giving my opinion. But I realized that a long time ago that you can't know everything. And I remember when I was 40, I said, I was going to Japan and I said, moving to Japan, I said, this is a good time to stop having opinions about X, Y, Z, A, B, C, because I'm not an expert and because I could be wrong. And I'm only giving these opinions out because all my friends say the same thing. So I feel pressure to say them. But now that I'm going to Japan, I'm going to say different things. I'm going to stop saying I know and just think about it. And a
Right.
lot of those things I don't have an opinion. I still don't have an opinion because I still don't know. I know a little, but
I w- I always like to say let's see what happens, right? Because it's
yeah,
good to have the conversations
yeah,
and to go through that thought exercise
yeah,
of, here's the causal relationship between what's happened in the past and what the implications were then.
yeah,
And history may not repeat itself, but
yeah.
so
Well,
um
I do a
is
similar thing. I tell young people, make predictions every year. You don't have to tell anybody, just make them, and then see what happens. And what you're going to
right,
find is that technology usually takes a lot longer to diffuse than you thought.
right,
Right? And you're going to be wrong about a lot of things, but that's okay. It's a learning experience. See it as a learning experience, not as I have to justify the things I've said in the past. You know.
right. It does take a long time to diffuse, and sometimes it's like blockchain. You really can't feel it, you can't experience it, but it's happening, and it's all in the
Yeah,
background,
yeah,
right? So,
yeah.
like, I could send you some crypto. If you had a Robinhood app, I could just send you some crypto. I don't know, could I? You're in Singapore, right?
Yeah.
They probably wouldn't allow that. I'm not gonna, don't worry.
Um, yeah, they keep changing their policy. They're pessimistic about crypto and but I don't
Oh
like
yeah.
crypto. I don't like it. It's useless. There's nothing there. I mean, you're investing in nothing. It's not a physical asset. It's not kind of intellectual property. It's nothing. It's not knowledge. It's nothing. It's just
Right. Well, it's not like a physical asset for sure. There is some utility though if it does serve a purpose. So it might be,
yeah, transaction
you
costs
know,
are too high. You know, there's cheaper ways to make digital money. So,
right? All right.
yeah.
Well, we'll table this one for another day.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
All right, sir.
Okay.
It was a pleasure.
Okay. Okay. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Have a good night.
Okay.
Or good
See you
morning,
later.
I mean. Here you go.
Yeah. Good morning. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.